and with McKinley and Rand, we're the Knowledge Engagement Team and Research Services. If you want to follow up with our team to learn more about our services and how we can support you with your knowledge engagement work, you can check out our website or send any one of us an email. We look forward to connecting with you all in the future. Without further ado, I'm very pleased to introduce our guest speaker today, Laura Whitton. With a background in visual communications, Laura spent the early years of her career in graphic design and public relations. She has since lived and worked in 6 countries and works to organize community to meet local challenges wherever she is. Laura has worked on projects addressing human trafficking, literacy, youth development, and avoidable blindness, using events and communications as her chosen tools. Laura completed an executive MBA at UCalgary last year and worked at Innovate Calgary and the Hunter Hub on media programs and entrepreneurship. She has just wrapped up her role there as she's scheduled to move to Washington, D.C. in the coming weeks. And there she plans to work as an events and communications strategy consultant. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Laura.
Thanks, Elise. I'm really excited to be with you here today. Elise mentioned that I've just wrapped up a job at the Hunter Hub and with Innovate Calgary at the university. And one of my last projects there was to take a look at a lot of our events that got postponed or canceled because of COVID-19 and say, what can we do to still get some of this engagement and move things to the virtual world so we can still accomplish our mission and get the work done. It was an amazing project. I thought it was going to be easy, and it was much more in depth than I realized. And it took me back to some of my background. I grew up, my dad was working for a big tech company my whole childhood. So I was probably the first kid in North America to have a CD player and the first one to have internet at my house. And I don't say that to brag, mostly to say how lucky I am and what a privilege. And to point out the fact that I'm not impressed by bright, shiny toys and by new technology. What impresses me most is bringing people together to get important things done. And when I can find tools that will help us do that, that's when I get excited. So the things I present today, I'm not presenting them because they're new or a trend. They're because they're things that will be useful to us. And I will take the lens of how do we make this work for people. So I'm going to start us off. I would really like to hear from you as the session goes forward so I can best direct some of my comments because we have a very short amount of time to cover a pretty big topic today. So I'd like to start out and ask, you signed up for this webinar for some reason. You're looking for something, you've got a question or you need some help or you're curious. If you would please post in the comments section over in the chat box, why have you come today? So we can take a look and see why we've come and see if we can get some direction today. There must be some reason you came. You're going to make me guess. Curiosity, that's a great one. Kind of see what's possible out there. Okay, we're transitioning some things to webinars. Yeah, I've seen some pretty bad stuff out there too. So the bar is pretty low, which is good news for all of us. We can all go up. Fundraising virtually is really important right now. A lot of our in-person events were the ways that we got our work done. Yeah, and looking just to rejig an event. Student engagement. Oh, these are all really great. Okay, face-to-face, it does feel like it's key, and taking it virtual feels like it could take out some of the magic, and I'm hoping we can help mitigate some of that today. Okay, and how do we engage interactively? Sometimes it's just our own team that we're saying, how do we meet better and engage virtually when we wish that we could be face-to-face? Okay, these are all really incredible. These are good place to start. All right, let me ask now, we're gonna do a poll, and I'd like to see what kind of experience you're coming from, because I think one thing that this period has shown us is there are some of us that are really comfortable just jumping into virtual, and some of us, it still just does not feel good. So Rand, if you could throw that poll up there and just take a minute to answer the question so we can see where everybody stands. We're going to talk a little bit about your attendance, how you are when you're an attendee, and about hosting it. And while you're answering that, I want to jump and just tell you a few general things that I have learned in my research here about virtual events. Some of the things that are different and some that are the same. One thing we need to be aware of when we're in a virtual event, our focus, the focus of our attendees is actually much shorter. It's not nearly as rich of an experience to be online. And so 10 minutes of talking is about all any of us can handle before we tune out. And we're off checking our email, or we've moved on to something else there. So when you're designing any kind of virtual presentation, remember every 10 minutes, you need to change it up, either a different speaker or some kind of interactive something. We move on to the 4 seconds. 4 seconds is the amount of silence or pause that we have the tolerance for in an online environment. It's not very long. I know when I'm teaching in a live format, a lot of times I do like to pause and wait. It gives people a chance to think, and it helps them know that they are free to interact. And it doesn't work like that online. 4 seconds and it's dead air and you've lost somebody. People think that they've lost the connection or their silence. It's really disturbing, so keep things moving along. Some of the things that are similar to an online event and an in-person event, but just get amplified when we're virtual. The first is the connection. You need to start every event, every meeting with some sort of really human connection. Call people by name, ask them where they're from, ask them why they came, something human so that people know that they are there to be part of something. Then you need to do something interesting in the middle, something besides just talking. Do a poll, have a video or performance, just something to break it up and interesting. And then make sure you end well. And usually that's again on a human note, to call people by name, help them know what's next. If much of the presentation is not perfect or is boring, that will all be forgotten if you get these 3 basic key elements in, and the rest is going to go a lot more smoothly. The other thing that I'd like to say when we're looking at things that are true in person but get amplified when you're in a virtual environment is how you interact with your audience. And basically we can divide all of any event, but especially virtual events and meetings, into 3 basic categories. There are the type where you are dictated to. Somebody comes and the feeling is, I'm here to talk and you're here to listen, and that's it. It requires 0 interaction on the listener's part or the participant's part, and it's usually not a very rich experience. There are times and places for it, and this is actually the kind of meetings that a lot of us are running right now. The second category is one where you're asked to participate, and some of the tools that we use there are question and answers or comments, and it is definitely a richer experience, a more engaging experience than the dictate category, but there's still more that we could do. If we can move our meetings and our events into more of the collaborate sphere, that's when we're going to start to feel more like humans and feel like this is a richer experience like we had in person. Breakout sessions, if they're done well, can help us move there, where people can talk in smaller groups, their voice can be heard, they can have some back and forth with somebody. If you've got a way for participants to be creating content, and that's very broad, that could be happening before the event, during the event, after the event, but some way for your meeting or event to change while it's happening because of what the participants do. And if you can create a chance for networking where they can really meet other people that are in the same event together, that's where you get a much richer, more involved meeting too. So those are some general things to take into account. I could really talk all day about any of these, but I want to give you a high level of the things that we need to consider. All right, I think we're probably have the poll results back. Rand, could you show us those poll results so we can kind of see where we are? Okay, so let's take a look here. So it looks like most of us have gotten comfortable at least attending a virtual meeting and a webinar. And a lot of us, most of us are saying there's got to be a better way. I've done it, I'm comfortable enough that it's time to move on to the next step. So that's encouraging. I suppose that's why most of you are here. And then we look to the hosting. It looks like many people are hosting, but think that there's more that they could be doing. And I think this is a great place to be if that's where we are. So thank you. This helps me get a sense of of where we stand and how to direct. For those that are feeling a little less or a little more on any of those, there should still be valuable things for you here. And just know that I'm happy to answer questions as we move forward. If we go a little too fast or a little too slow, jump in and we'll get your questions answered too. So we've established that that there's still a lot we could learn about virtual events. And one of the questions is, does it really matter? Do we need these events? And part of it is we all wish that we had this crystal ball to look into the future and see how much time and energy we should be putting into creating virtual events. The interesting thing is, in a lot of the researchers I've talked to, the CEOs and groups that I've talked to lately, everybody's trying to find this crystal ball. And leaders and researchers do not agree on how long we will be in our current situation and need to be meeting primarily virtually. Some people think by fall 2020, we'll be mostly back to normal, or what we used to think of as normal. And some people are very adamant that it's going to be 2023. And there's really no way we can know right now. So the attitude I'm taking is, how do we embrace these changes right now and how we gather and get the most out of them and see what this can do for us in a positive light. So I wanted to take a look at the pros and cons of meeting virtually, because I think this is going to help us in a couple of ways. If we can look at the things we don't like at virtual events or the weaknesses in them and understand them, we can help mitigate them. And if we can look at the pros of why virtual events are helpful and good, we can help amplify those and make them work to our advantage. So if you could go over to the chat and tell me some of the things that are bad or the cons about virtual events or virtual meetings. Why is it we struggle with them right now? I saw somebody's previous comment saying their faculty is already zoomed out. Yeah, we're getting a little burnt out on this one standard. It's too easy to multitask. Yep, lack of focus. And you just get tired of being there. Oh, it's so hard to share vibes in an online meeting. And I know that fundraising, you have to be able to feel both sides of things. It's hard to host these too, because you don't know what people are thinking or how they're responding. You're not in the room, you can't feel the energy. And it just doesn't feel normal. It feels like more of the same. Yeah, I agree. It's intense being on camera all day. We're not used to seeing our own reflection when we're in a meeting, and we have to stare at ourselves and what our hair looks like and what the lighting looks like. And you're talking to yourself. You're talking to a little dot on your computer all day. It is not quite the same. And the internet going down. Yeah, I was just before we got in here, I had to go kick one of my sons off of his video call, so my bandwidth would be good enough for this. All really great answers. McKinley, can you throw my answers up there? Let's see if we covered it all, or if I had any more to add on there. One thing I'll add is that's exhausting is there's either no etiquette or new etiquette that we haven't quite learned, that we don't quite treat each other with the same respect that we do in person. And that starts to feel a little cold and uncaring and awkward. And a low commitment level. People sign up for things and then either they don't show up or they show up and they're not, if they like it, maybe they'll turn on their camera. Maybe they won't, maybe they'll participate. And a lot of us are working with really unfamiliar tools. We're not quite sure, we don't have the confidence to handle the tools like we want to and teach like we used to and engage with people like we used to. And there aren't a lot of people out there that seem to have that, so we don't even know quite who to go to. So a lot of things get executed in a very amateur way. All right, well, we started with the bad stuff. I like to get that out of the way, or the stuff that we need to, like I said, mitigate. Let's take a look at the pros. What are some of the good things about going from a live event to a virtual or an online one? Access to more people, for sure. And I think that goes two ways. More people can come and participate with you. And I've seen a lot of people able to get some really incredible, talented, knowledgeable people that they wouldn't normally be able to fly in from someplace or that wouldn't have the time. And now they do, because it's much easier just to hop on. It levels the playing field in a lot of ways. It can make it so that the extroverts and the introverts are on a little bit more equal playing ground, so that, yeah, it can level the playing field. You don't have to travel. You can fit a lot more things in. You can go back and watch the recordings. Yeah, reach people in rural situations, assuming they've got good enough bandwidth where they are. Across borders, it can be a huge cost savings to not have to do the catering and the event space and all of that. And then you are able to get a lot more questions. People may feel freer to ask things that they might not be willing to stand up or raise their hand or even have the time for. Yeah, again, costs are cut down. All right, let's see if you covered all of mine. Okay, you got them all. The last one I want to mention when we think about one of the pros in investing our time and our energy right now into creating virtual events is it creates resilience for our organization. It means that, you know, in the future, even if things start to go back to a more normal pace and we are able to be in meetings and we are able to be at events and conferences, this offers options. If someone is sick or someone's not able to travel, or you do want to bring in somebody that has expertise but normally wouldn't be able to come, this offers you more options. It makes you more resilient against things that could happen in the future as well. So when you're thinking about whether it's worth it to invest in it right now, don't just think about this as a stopgap, but as ways to create better organizations for the future. All right, so now that we know that I'm going to say, I think we all want to be here to create better virtual events. A lot of us are wanting to jump and say, okay, so what's that perfect tool? If it's not Zoom, what is it? Tell me what it is. I'll go buy the subscription. Let's move forward. Let's do this thing. And again, child of a tech guy, if there's one thing I've learned, it's that tools don't solve problems. It's people that do. And I will tell you, in all of my research right now, the perfect tool for everyone does not exist. So it's going to take looking at our own organizations and what we need to figure out what those tools are. We need to take a minute to pause and think meaningfully about what we really want to accomplish with our virtual events. Even though we feel a little panicked and like, we've got to change this, we've got to do this, I just need someone to set it up. Take a minute and say, this is a good time to pause and figure out what we want here. I'm going to give you a list of the things that you can go through to help pause and think through those questions. And today we are only going to talk about number 1 and number 2 because there's more work to be done. So we want to take a look at you and your organization and your stakeholders. I'll probably use the word audience. I want you to please pardon me if I talk business language. I'm coming from a lot of business background and startups, but the same principles apply for not-for-profits and for social ventures too. So just translate in your head. If I talk business, just know I love everything that you're doing and it works for your constituents as well. So first of all, we need to assess the needs of your organization and your stakeholders and your audience and what those needs are there. And once you've done that assessment, you'll be able to choose the best virtual tools to help you accomplish your goals. All right, let's go back one more. Okay, these are the two most important questions in my mind that you need to ask yourself. The first thing is, why are you gathering in the first place for this virtual event? You need a deep understanding of what that is and be as specific as possible. Is it because you are trying to educate somebody or share information? Is the most important part of the gathering the collaboration and the network building and the relationship building? Are you just trying to attract new interest for something? Is it your bread and butter? Like, you have to meet with people to actually offer your services. For some people, that's at the root of what you do. Is it for fundraising or for sales generations? Do you have to, at the end of the day, have dollars come in? Or is it purely social? Because that's important too. It's important for team building. It's important for healthy communities. And that is a very valid reason to be gathering. So if you can get a handle on why you're gathering and get really clear with your organization about what that purpose is, that's going to be your first step. And you need to really think about who you are gathering with. And as organizations, I hope you're already asking yourself when you are creating events and programs, who your constituents are that you are preparing this program for, and why they're coming and what their experience will be in this. So that doesn't change. You still need to ask yourself all of those questions, but probably even a little more thoughtfully, because you're going to have to design something that's not quite, it doesn't feel quite natural yet. So continue to ask yourself those questions. In addition to those questions, ask yourself, what is their access to technology? And access can mean, I mean, physically owning, do they own a computer or a lap, an iPad, whatever it is, owning it? Do they live in a place where they have access? Do they have the skills to get on that technology? And, a close sister of that is their comfort with technology. And that can also mean many things. Is getting online just something that's too overwhelming for them, for a variety of reasons? So consider those as well. And once you can really start to understand who you're meeting with and why you're gathering and get a good handle on that, then you're ready to look at some of the more logistical pieces of it and the other questions you should be asking. And there are many questions. I think these are some of the most important before you choose the tools and design your program. If you can get an idea of what, and be clear about what the group size is. Are you just looking for one-on-one meetings? Are you looking to do a meeting like this where you've got 3 or 4 presenters that will be presenting to a big group? Is it just you presenting or working with a big group? Or do you want a large amount of people working with other large amounts of people? So get an idea of the group size and the types of personal dynamics you want to see there. How often are you going to be running these meetings? And that will help you decide what kind of tools you're ready to invest in. If it's a one-time really big event and it's, your big annual gala or something that's big and once, that's going to be a completely different set of tools than regular meetings where you need to keep the costs low and the logistics are pretty simple. If you're doing something with many people that you don't know, with brand new people to your organization, that's going to look different than if it's regular people who are already familiar with and working with your organization. So figure out how frequently you'll be having these meetings and how frequently the same people will be coming back and meeting with you or coming to your events. You also want to consider security. And for some people, this is top priority, and for some people, it's less. If you're doing an awareness type of campaign, you probably, the more the merrier. Public, bring everybody in to see what we're doing and experience it. But in some situations, it's going to come down to medical information, even where it needs to be absolutely confidential, and you need to be really sure about the security of your meetings. So get clear on how private and how secure you want this event to be. And there are pros and cons to both, because you can say, I want it absolutely secure, but if really you're trying to reach a broad audience and it doesn't matter, that can limit what you're doing. Look at the resources and the commitment that your organization is willing to put into virtual events. The tools have a vast array of costs. Some are free, but they're limited in what they can do. And then some are really quite an investment, but have really, really powerful tools. I think we at all, perfect world, want the unicorn that's free and perfect, and they don't exist. So think about what you perhaps used to spend on events and the return on investment there, especially if you're fundraising, and how much you would be willing to shift that into something virtual, and whether you want to make that a long-term commitment or a short-term. And look at the expertise on your team. Do you have somebody who can shift and take on technical things and build things that are very technical, or do you need something where you will require a lot of outside services, or something that's just a very simple solution to patch things together? So just get really clear about what you can do on your team as far as resources and a commitment. And then other needs is a little bit of a catch-all category, and there are certainly many other things, but if there are things that are really important to your organization and to your meetings, put those on the list. Maybe you need to be able to share files or have sound at an event, or be able to record it. But just take note of those things that are necessities. And I will tell you, like in life, there's a really good chance you're not going to get everything on your list. So decide which things are must-haves and which things are more wants. Like they would make a great event if it were possible, and you'll be able to prioritize what you want. So once you've got through these questions a little clearer picture about the types of things you wish you could have in virtual event tools, I kind of want to tell you what's out there in the world. So before COVID-19, for the most part, most of the world preferred in-person events. They're rich, they're fun. You get that experience of being with other people and building off of other people. So the marketplace was not really creating the perfect virtual event tool. They were filling in gaps where people wanted virtual tools for distance meetings, and they were mostly just as a backup option. So they fall into several categories. The first one is the meetings category, and we're in one of those. We're in Zoom meetings. It's the one we do the most often, and it works for what we need it when we need to meet. Microsoft Teams. Can we go back one slide? Microsoft Teams is similar. There we go. Several that are like meetings. You're familiar with them. And very similar are the webinar tools, where it's similar to this. Usually you aren't able to interact with the people around you and you just watch someone speak. It's more of that I'm here to speak and you're here to listen. Maybe there's some commenting. And there are several good webinar tools out there. I've listed a couple of examples here that are used. And I think many of us are probably familiar with meetings and webinar. When it starts to get interesting, it's when the apps and the platforms that are used for trade shows have started to morph into being able to be used for big virtual events. And I've listed a few here. So their primary reason for being is when you go to a big conference or a big trade show, and maybe you've been to a conference where they have you download an app, it gives you the schedule of the speakers. It lets you sometimes schedule a meeting with somebody else that's at that same conference or event. And it was meant to be a companion to actual live events. So some of these big conference trade show type apps have shifted now in this new COVID-19 world. So they put like built-in Zoom meetings in there, so you can show your meetings virtually. You can host your speakers there too. So they've patched things together. So it's still very much a trade show, but you can have speakers in them. These would be ideal for a big event that you have invested a lot in, and there will be several different types of presentations and speakers. And they often require quite a bit of an investment, both money and technical investment, to make them worthwhile and to make them quite good. If you want something on this list that's a little bit easier to approach, the bottom one, Hopin, is probably the most user-friendly as far as just wanting to try something out and seeing if a trade show style app would work for you. It's fairly easy to build yourself and fairly quick, and there's not a huge commitment. It's pretty low cost there. The next quick category is virtual co-working. So these apps were designed so that people who lived far apart, a lot of times it was software developers, could come into a workspace and talk to each other throughout the day and collaborate on projects. And they have taken their platforms and shifted them so you can turn them into events. And I'll show you a little bit the floor plan there. The thing I like about the virtual co-working for virtual events is that it gives you more the feel of the freedom of being in a space where you can choose who you talk to and how long you spend with them. And you can mix up and move a little bit more. And you get to choose and be in a smaller group of usually 4 to 6 people at a time. So it's a lot more manageable to have real collaborations, real conversations together. At the same time you're in that format, you can also have a live presentation to everyone who's at the event, up to 800 people. So it feels like it has the best of both worlds. Again, it was not originally designed to be an event platform. They have just shifted to make it into an event platform now that so many people are hungry to do that. So there's still some little nuances and some bugs, but I do really like the feel of these virtual co-working platforms. And then I've just recently learned more about virtual whiteboards. That's the last category that I've listed here. These are used a lot by creative agencies and again by developers. it makes it so it's especially good for working with your own team. If you need to collaborate and work something out together, you can prepare a whiteboard in advance and invite everybody to collectively submit to it. And then you can come into a meeting together and brainstorm together and work on something together. So it's not as great for hosting an event, but for collaborating, it's really a fantastic tool. So knowing none of them are perfect tools, there's no one perfect thing you can buy for virtual events. But again, if you have a little sense of what you need out of an event, you can choose one or more of these platforms. And sometimes you can stitch them together to get what you want. So if you love one about, some things about Zoom, the way that it does presentation tools and you've got control over who's speaking, but then you want to allow somebody to go and do some networking after. I've designed one event just like that, where we had the speakers present in Zoom, and then we jumped over to Remo and let people talk freely after and discuss what was happening. So sometimes you get to be creative and stitch things together and make it work for you and what you need on that. And then I'm just going to walk you quickly to show you a little bit what each of these types look like. You've all seen Zoom and Google Meet, a bunch of people in a room. You don't have a whole lot of control even when you're in the breakout rooms, but it does gather everybody. And then the next one, this is webinar format. This is kind of a deluxe webinar format. This is what they're using right now this week for Inventures here in Calgary. So if you really want to see how this works, jump on and grab a ticket there and see how that feels. But it is focused mostly on delivering content, delivering messages, but there are some interactive tools that can go with it. So that's, for webinar style, that's about what it looks like. This one is Swap Card. So this would be your trade show conference type app. And as you can see, there are all sorts of pieces within it. So it's very powerful for really big events with, hundreds and thousands of people, where you've brought in sponsors and you've brought in vendors, and you want people to be able to connect. And often in the past, it would be people that would be traveling from far reaches. So this one really offers the sky's the limit. Anything's possible. Just know that it will be a big investment of time and of money to make this happen. But these types of apps can be really extraordinary. And this is Remo that I was talking about, where you feel like you are at, in a conference room or a ballroom with tables, and you can click and move to different tables and end up talking to those 3 to 6 people there. And then there can also be a broadcast of speakers too. So this one offers a lot of flexibility. These are pretty low commitment as well. You can get a month-to-month subscription and do as many meetings as you want there, host as many events there, and there are some customization possibilities on this one. And this one is Stormboard. This is one of the virtual whiteboards. So this is something you can get as a team and post up your ideas, have everybody else add their ideas, and then hop on together and sort through them. It can be as simple or as complex as you like. It's really built to grow with your organization and the way that you do collaboration in your meetings. Okay, so now that we've gone through all of the tools, I will just go back and reiterate that we've only done assess your needs and choose your virtual tools. Just know when you're doing a virtual event, there's a lot more to it than just sending out a link to a Zoom meeting if you want it to be engaging. Once you've assessed your needs and you've chosen your tools, make a plan as to what you want the outcomes to be of that event. And make sure to prepare your team so that they know and have what they need, and prepare your participants so that they know what to expect and what they can bring to it. Remember the human connection. Use people's names. Find ways to connect other humans to humans. That will be the thing that keeps people coming to your virtual events. And then make sure that you've built in ways to follow up with people after they've participated in your event, because it is about building relationships. No pressure. A lot to consider. I'll end by saying I'm in a unique position right now where I'm getting ready to move back to the US. I finished my work here in Canada. If you have questions and just need just need an ear of somebody to help you sort through some of your thoughts and some of these self-assessments you're trying to do, I'm happy for you to reach out to me. As long as I'm here, if I've got the time, I'm happy to give it to you right now, and would love to share some of these things I've learned quite recently. So thank you.